Women in Horror Month and Women's History Month are always back to back, and every year I wait until the very last minute to celebrate either of those things. Hey there, creepy peeps. I'm Nightmare Maven. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I talk about horror movies, books, do other things occasionally. It's all spooky all year round. So if you end up liking this video, maybe subscribe. As you can tell already from the title of this video, I'm going to be sharing some of what I think are kind of underrated, definitely some of my favorite horror movies that are directed by women that aren't your usual suspects on like every single internet list ever. Not that I have anything against Near Dark, American Psycho, or American Mary. I love all of those movies. They are great, but I just wanted to show some love to some other movies. Most of them are like semi-recent releases. This isn't a ranked list, so let's just go ahead and start randomly with the Fear Street trilogy, which, yes, is 3 films in one, but it's one continuous story, so I think it counts. Directed by Leigh Janiak, the trilogy is based on some of R.L. Stine's Fear Street series and follows a group of teenagers discovering the secrets behind their cursed town, and they set out to undo it. The whole like Fear Street event on Netflix was so fun, and it kind of had a chokehold on the internet for a little bit there. But the series really shined for me in the way it juggled like teen material, but making it dark and scary in a more adult way. And I mostly mean like the fact that it ended up being rated R, even though this is based on a teen book series. But it made sense because the viewership was going to be split anyway. There were going to be teens that ended up watching this series, and then a lot of the viewership was also going to be older because you're pulling in those fans of the original novels. And when you're younger reading those stories are scary. Even if you wouldn't find the same books as scary as an adult, the films captured that fear and kept the teen vibes at the same time. In an interview with Deadline, the director Leigh Janiak mentioned that making the films as bloody and as scary as they were was totally intentional, saying, quote, "They have to feel like movies that I would want to watch now at my age, but also if you're 13, 14 and thinking, I shouldn't be watching this, but I'm going to." And I think she nailed it. The Fear Street trilogy is a Netflix exclusive, so that's the only place you can watch it. Next up is The Invitation, the 2015 Invitation, not the most recent one. I totally understand when we're talking about Karen Kusama films, Jennifer's Body is like the main one that comes up. Totally get that. But I feel like The Invitation is such a good slow burn horror film. It takes place during a dinner party where the hosts are kind of giving cult vibes. Something is very clearly off and things kind of start to spiral out of control throughout the evening. As I mentioned, this is a slow burn horror movie, and I really like those movies. They rely a lot more on tension than jump scares. I also love the kind of twisted humor involved in horror movies that are centered around like family gatherings and dinner parties especially, because they can feel so awkward and you definitely feel trapped in those situations. As I'm saying that might be more of an introverted thing. I know a good amount of you out there are gonna understand what I'm talking about. And not that this is a comedy film by any means, I just feel like there's something darkly comedic that I pick up on in this movie. Imagining the typical like, ugh, I'm trapped here and I am being forced to socialize dinner party feeling paired with an increasing suspicion that your hosts are next level bonkers. And Karen Kusama herself has said that the film emerged from this idea of loss and exploring what could happen if that loss caused someone to change for the worse, like to the point that you don't recognize this person you once thought you knew. And that mixed in with this idea of like Hollywood kind of socializing and just social decorum in general makes for a really tense movie. The Invitation is streaming in loads of places if you're in the United States, or if you have a VPN. It's on Shudder, Tubi, Canopy, YouTube, just to name a few. All right, moving on, I definitely want to mention Master because I love a dark academia moment, especially when that dark academia theme tackles the toxicity of these academic institutions, especially when it comes to non-white students and faculty. Directed by Mariama Diallo, Master follows Jasmine, who is a freshman at Ancaster, as she starts experiencing increasingly violent and racially charged attacks from a mysterious hooded figure. So director and writer Mariama Diallo mentioned on the Washington Post Capehart podcast that it was important that Ancaster, the school itself, was portrayed as a character in the film. And as the villain, especially. Or as she puts it, the puppet master pulling the strings. And it hits at this larger picture going on in the film, how these higher education institutions like this drive the character's behavior in the movie. Which comes more into play with this parallel story going on at the same time as Jasmine's, and that is involving two of the faculty members, who are two Black women, Gail and Liv, who are climbing the ladder at Ancaster. And their storyline kind of encompasses like what that looks like for them amongst their predominantly white colleagues. I thought this movie was great though. The ending was a lot different than what I was expecting, and obviously I'm not going to spoil it in case you haven't seen it and you want to. But if you end up going to watch this movie because of this video, or if you've seen it already, let me know in the comments what you thought about it, because I'm fascinated to hear your guys' interpretation of it. Master is an Amazon Prime original, so that is the only place it's available to stream. I also have to mention Tigers Are Not Afraid, because I'm clearly on like a sad girl horror kick right now in this list. Started off with Fear Street, which is a little bit fun, and now I feel like we're just slowly descending into like the horror that's gonna make you cry territory. Directed by Issa Lopez, this movie is billed as a dark fairy tale about a group of children trying to survive amongst cartels and ghosts, both literal and figurative, during the drug war. And if you're hearing that summary and you're thinking like, shit, that sounds heavy, you would be correct. It's a devastating story at its core, with some fantastical elements, which I really love. And the fantasy part really surrounds our main character, Estrella, who is granted 3 wishes, which she uses throughout the film. The magical realism throughout the story gives it a bit of hope, which is something that Issa Lopez has said she wanted audiences to come away with by the time the credits roll. It's the kind of hope that hits the hardest because the main characters are all children. So definitely brace yourself if you decide to watch Tigers Are Not Afraid, which I hope you do. I hope you end up watching it if you haven't seen it already. It's streaming on Shudder. It's also available to rent in like all of the usual places. And finally, another kind of sad one. I am really living up to my water sign stereotype right now. So let's talk about Relic, which is directed by Natalie Erica James. And it follows mother and daughter Kay and Sam, who are visiting Sam's grandmother Edna, who has gone missing. Edna eventually reemerges, unaware that she has been gone for so long, and soon strange things start happening in the house. Yeah. This one hits a little bit harder after experiencing the loss of a parent, especially to those slow and insidious illnesses and diseases. I've seen quite a lot of reviews comparing Edna's story to dementia. I think it's canon in the movie that she has Alzheimer's, but I think the story is universal to so many different experiences, and that's why it works so well. There's also themes of the role of a caregiver and the stress and eventual guilt that comes along with that role. The director, Natalie Erica James, told the LA Times she ultimately sees this movie as a Vanitas painting, saying Vanitas art really focuses on motifs of the brevity of life and the inevitability of death. In some ways, you can interpret the film as watching a woman in each stage of her life, and that's backed up by the cyclical nature of aging and having children and growing old, having to care for them, and then having them care for you. It's a dark movie that isn't jump scare heavy and instead relies on the sickening sense of dread and the idea of your own mortality and the mortality of everyone you love. I feel like this movie is especially good for water signs specifically. Like if I made a video giving recommendations based on your astrological sign, this would definitely be the Cancer pick. Well, there you have it. There was exactly one fun, kind of gory, slashery recommendation in there, and the rest of them will probably make you cry a little bit. This is why women making horror are superior. I don't make the rules. So share your favorite made by women horror movie in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new here. Become a creepy peep today. I will see you next week with some new videos. Until then, stay strange. Bye.